Introducing a new breakthrough. Net zero high-speed 3G. The third generation of dial-up.
3G network, which means you can surf the web.
I'm calling you on my iPhone 3G on 3G.
It was launched here first by Vodafone to much fanfare in 2005, and 3G revolutionised communication, allowing users to make video calls and browse the internet on the go.
6, 5, 4, 3.
By 2009, the first 3G iPhone in the world launched in Auckland, thanks to our superior time zone. It was epic.
We've come a long way since then. Now we have more mobiles in New Zealand than New Zealanders.
But 20 years after its launch, that means
the time has come for 3G to pass on.
That means some people with devices that rely on 3G will need to get new ones.
Countries around the world are in the process or about to begin shutting down parts of the mobile networks. And all hell is about to break loose.
Kia ora, I'm Alexia Russell, and today on The Detail, what retiring 3G by the end of this year means for New Zealanders. Why telcos here are desperate to avoid the switch-off debacle that happened in Australia. And where will all the defunct 3G mobiles go?
Don't put it in general landfill. A huge risk to the waste management providers, waste the resource, and you could end up causing an incident.
That's e-waste expert Patrick Moynihan from Ecotech. More from him in a moment. But first, Paul Brislen, Chief Executive of the New Zealand Telecommunications Forum, an organisation that has a quasi-regulatory role in this sector. You'll be hearing his voice a lot this year as he gets this message through.
By the end of the year, all three mobile operators will have switched off their 3G networks and upgraded to 4G, which is the next generation of technology.
How do you know if you've got a 3G phone?
All the phones around today use 3G. You'll see it quite often on your handset when you are travelling around the country. You'll see it'll pop up. It'll connect to whatever network your phone wants to connect to. So at the moment, everybody's using it, which is great. The problem is if your phone will only use 3G or if it's reliant on 3G for various bits and pieces. And that is a problem because that will not connect to anything come early next year. So unfortunately, there's no simple way to say if you've got one of these, it won't work. You actually have to check because New Zealand's wide open. We're very, very transparent when it comes to phones coming into the country. You can bring them in from overseas. You can buy them by the box load and ship them in, all that kind of thing. So we don't track all of the devices that come in, and some of them are set up in a way that's different in other countries to the way we would set them up in New Zealand. They may not work.
So you basically, unless you've got a very old phone and you pretty much know that it needs replacing anyway,
yeah,
you've basically got to run along to your provider and say, can you check this one out for me? What am I on?
That's it at the moment. We will have a number you can text shortly will be available. You'll be able to send off your text message and the system will check to see what kind of phone you've got to tell you whether, yes, you're okay, no, yours needs replacing, or for some in the middle, it's a grey area. It depends. Please bring it into a shop and we'll have a look for you.
Okay, so easy.
Mm.
All right. This is a pain in the neck, isn't it?
Well, it's not the first time this has happened. We've switched off. You remember Telecom used to have 025 telephone numbers. That was a whole different technology family. They had to go out and talk to everybody about switching off their phones, getting the new phones, swapping to the new network. It is a hassle.
Which they needed new hardware for.
They need new devices, yeah, all of that kind of thing. And it is a hassle, but hopefully once you've moved on to the new platform, you're good for many years to come. And 3G was kind of the end of the old world of mobile devices. I won't bore you with all the technical details, but 4G and 5G onwards are much more aligned. So we shouldn't have this to worry about.
Sort of more internet connected.
Yeah, they're internet first, if you like. So they are.
So we can download those annoying apps.
You can download the apps, but also the cat videos, because let's not forget the internet's full of cat videos. So that's that. Hopefully from here on out, you should be okay for quite some time to come. But we don't want to leave anybody behind. This is a massive upgrade opportunity. So for those who are stuck using your crusty old button phone that may or may not cope terribly well, now's the chance to have a think about what is it I use my phone for? What should I be doing? Where can I go from here?
How many of these old bricks are out there?
It's a bit hard to tell at this point because they're connecting quite nicely to the network that's in place. We won't know for sure how many phones are left until the end of the project, until Christmas, when suddenly there'll be a flurry of activity, I'm sure, of people rushing out to get new devices. You don't need to get the top of the range $2,500 smartphone. There are phones at all kind of price points up and down. So
pick a number between 10 and 100,000. What area?
At this stage, tens of thousands. I mean, there are lots of people out there still using devices that rely on 3G. We will have a year-long campaign of getting in touch with them. So already they're starting to receive text messages from their providers saying your phone needs to be changed. You'll start to see a lot more advertising. You'll get sick of the sound of my voice by the end of the year because I'll be talking to everybody I can. I've been out talking already with some of the key industry groups. So Facilities Management Association, for example, they run a lot of, they're an association of facilities managers, oddly enough. They run a lot of the big corporate buildings, and they said, well, what about some of the lifts we've got? What about the air conditioning? What about all these things that talk using mobile technology? And quite rightly, that's a really important question. You've got to make sure the emergency phone in the lift works because you need it for emergencies. So they are going out to check on all of that. Yeah.
It's starting to sound a bit like Year 2K-ish.
It's very similar, right? It is a project that we've got a finite deadline. We know it's coming. It's happened in other countries around the world, but we can make use of the learnings from Y2K and from other countries to identify those kinds of devices that will be affected and say, okay, well, now you've got the opportunity, you've got the rest of the year. What are you going to do? Do you need it? If not, that's fine. Does it need to be upgraded? Do you need to change the software? Is it just a setting inside the phone? Because it will be for a lot of people. All of that needs to be done. But the first thing you've got to do is know whether you're affected or not.
So run through, for me, a list of these other things that most normal people won't have to worry about. Is it...
Well, it's as long as the you remember the introduction a few years ago of this thing called the Internet of Things, where devices would start to communicate online. That really kicked off with the 3G network launch. A lot of it's now on Wi-Fi, but there are a lot of devices out there that use 3G to connect. So some lifts, air conditioning units. You might have those health pendants that you sometimes get, the alarms if you have a fall.
Medical alert
kind of things. Yeah, exactly. I discovered the other day a maker of those electric vehicle charging stations that you can buy for in your home if you've got an electric car. For some reason, they were using 3G chips to communicate. And somebody told me also about pacemaker. So that's definitely something you'll want to get
Does Health
checked.
New Zealand know about this?
Yes, that's this year, right? We will be going out telling everybody we can think of and everybody else as well. You need to do the audit.
Okay. A little while back, I talked to the CAB about a huge survey they had done about digital literacy, and there are a massive number of people out there for whom all this is very confronting.
Yes.
And they've just got a phone and they only use it to ring 111 if they have to, you know. How intimidating is this sort of change for people like that?
Look, I totally understand. The digital equity piece is something that's really important to the telcos in New Zealand. They really want to make sure that if you are reliant on a phone, on a device of any kind, it continues to work and that you're not going to be left disadvantaged. So there will be programs in place from each of the telcos to reach out to customers in those kind of groups. We've already made contact with organisations like Age Concern. There's a digital equity coalition, Aotearoa, DECA. They're very good at connecting us up with organisations that support people in these kind of positions. Because you're right, it's very, very challenging if you're not a fan of the technology to suddenly be told, well, you've got to change this thing you don't really care about that's just an annoyance, but is in fact a life-saving device. So we will need you to do something that you're not comfortable doing. And that is a challenge. So we try to make it as easy as possible for people.
I mean, you can pick up these things from the warehouse, but for a lot of pensioners these days, $80 for something you never use is really expensive.
Yeah, and you know, people will have to make the decision as to what they want to do, because it could well be that I know a lot of people who still have landlines and are paying just for a landline because they don't want the internet, they just have a telephone. that's $60 or $70 a month, every month for a telephone. Whereas if you were spending that on your mobile, for example, you'd be paying $10 or $20 a month and be able to call anybody on the planet. You want the new cheaper rates, and you want the ability to use these devices anywhere that you happen to be. Then you've got to change the technology, and unfortunately, that is a challenge for some people.
What is in our phones that is going to cause a problem when we start throwing them all away?
Well, this is a big concern for the industry. Phones are full of nasty chemicals. They've got batteries in them with lithium. We've seen rubbish truck fires up and down the country as people start to throw away devices. The batteries get damaged and they can catch fire.
That fire in Milldale the other week was started with a phone charger.
Yes.
3 more fire appliances have been called to the Auckland suburb of Wainui to fight a large house fire. 9 crews are now battling the blaze in Milldale, Wainui, which has engulfed 2 homes.
And it's a different type of fire. I am not a firefighter, but the ones I've spoken to say that electric batteries, lithium batteries in particular, burn in quite a different way to a traditional fire, and they're very difficult to put out. So they are very, very dangerous when they do start a fire.
Okay, so if you discover you need to replace your old 3G phone, what should you do with the old one?
There's a health and safety risk in terms of the embedded lithium batteries for when they're going through general waste streams. A lot of people, they don't know exactly what to do with their cell phone. They might put it in the red-lidded bin, which means if it then gets loaded into a rubbish truck, a compactor, it can then get compacted and catch on fire.
This is e-waste expert Patrick Moynihan, who spoke to the Detail's Amanda Gillies about the safe disposal and recycling of mobile phones.
It would be safe to say that there would be 10 fires a week. It would be more than that associated with lithium-embedded batteries in things like mobile phones, gaming controllers, but in rubbish trucks, at waste transfer facilities, at the landfills, at places where those sorts of items shouldn't end up.
Did you say 10 fires a week?
Yeah, in Auckland alone, there is at least 2 fires a week at the region's recycling centres that are caused by battery-powered devices or batteries being disposed of incorrectly. 5 rubbish trucks and recycling trucks caught fire the first 2 weeks of 2025 alone.
Wow. Okay, so if that's not an incentive, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and that is what gets reported. So obviously the big waste companies and things, that they'll report all fires. Yeah, there's a lot, and it's a significant problem in Australia at the moment.
How worried are you? Because, we're getting to the end of this 3G and there's going to be a whole lot of phones that are going to be going out there and people getting rid of it. How worried are you about that people won't get rid of them properly or safely?
There would be a significant amount more that would be disposed of in a non-environmentally and compliant manner than what there would go through regular channels. For me, it's wasteful. There's not a huge amount of there's no regulation in the New Zealand market, so there's not a tremendous amount awareness for the consumers. So I'm not worried, although a very large percentage of it will just end up in general landfill.
And you just said we don't have legislation around e-waste, but there are standards. What are they?
Well, there's no legislation or regulation for the disposal of electronic waste in New Zealand. So the standard may be imposed on like an organisation that they have to do the right thing with their end-of-life assets. But from a legislative standpoint, consumers are able to just throw their e-waste in the bin, as can organisations and whomever. And there's no standard in which recyclers have to meet a level of credibility or compliance in order to receive these materials. So the likes of us, we spend a considerable amount of energy and resource on making sure that our downstream providers are compliant, for instance. But because there's no requirement to do so, it means we may then just compete with Gary in a van who will take your cell phone off your hands and then bundle it up and ship it to Malaysia or whatever it might be.
if I was to bring my phone to you at the end of the year, what would happen to it as opposed to, worst case scenario, I took it to the landfill or put it in my dustbin and it ended up in the landfill?
So we would receive the item. Anything that's data bearing will get an ID. So it gets checked into the system, essentially. So we run community e-waste days where we'll get thousands of phones, potentially. But an ID gets put on it, and then it'll go to a hand disassembly station, and they'll pull out the lithium-ion batteries and separate the lithium-ion batteries. And then it gets closed off from a disposition standpoint. And then the lithium-ion batteries get bundled up and exported into Singapore, and that goes, and we recover the black mass. And then the cell phone, based on the age, will get graded and then shipped into Japan to a refinery where they'll shred it, gasify it, and extract the materials out of it.
And if it goes straight to the bin and onto the landfill?
It'll get tipped out with all the municipal waste, flattened out in the landfill, and then buried with a layer of soil and then more rubbish.
And then that's when toxins can seep out and we get into trouble.
The disposal or the improper disposal of e-waste can result in leachates. So brominated fire retardants, which is found in some plastics from electronic waste, that can leach into the waterways or into the soil, and that's a hypercarcinogen. Electronic waste, particularly older generation equipment, may include things like lead or cadmium or mercury, which again, if it's concentrated, can cause leachate, which then gets into the groundwater, which can then pollute drinking water and things.
To prepare Kiwis for the move, telcos have launched a range of ads.
And since most people now use 4G, we're planning to say goodbye to 3G. Don't worry, most of us are already good to go. And you'll have plenty of time to get sorted if you need to replace your device. Then you can do more in more places and stay connected with Spark.
Now, obviously you've mentioned that you'll be campaigning over the next few months to make everyone aware of this. Is this, by any chance, a reaction to how the debacle unfolded in Australia, where they knew for years it was happening and then suddenly it took everybody by surprise?
Yeah. In part it is, to be honest, because the three mobile operators in New Zealand looked at Australia and said, we absolutely do not want that happening here.
Well, there are fears tens of thousands of people won't be able to call 000 from today as Optus and Telstra pull the plug on the 3G network.
To be fair to the Aussie telcos, they did a lot of work in the lead up. They communicated with all kinds of people. They told them exactly what was happening, and it still went horribly wrong. So I'm hoping...
Why did it go wrong? Was it to do with the emergency number?
Australia was set to shut down its 3G network in July 2024, but was delayed due to an alarming new realisation that millions of 4G and 5G devices can't call emergency numbers without an active 2G or 3G network.
Well, partly it was a lack of understanding of what it meant for a raft of customers who are in the gap between 3G and 4G. So there are a number of devices out there that will make calls on 3G, so voice calls on 3G, but data on 4G. So you think your phone is fine because it says 4G on it. Unfortunately, it won't allow a voice call to go through. And then it got very political. And in Australia, when things get political, the journalists get involved. And there was a lot of rocks being thrown backwards and forwards from different parties. And it all got very, very spicy. And it did not go very well. So they delayed the switch off until they'd explained it all thoroughly once again to everyone.
Telco giant Telstra has extended its 3G network switch-off deadline by 2 months until August 31, giving customers extra time to upgrade their devices.
So we're hoping to avoid that. We will have this, as I say, this text message checker up and running in the next few weeks. We've got a few other things in mind for the rest of the year as it progresses, but mostly it's about customer awareness. You have to know that this is coming, and then you can decide what you're going to do. If you don't know and it's suddenly a surprise at the end of the year, that's I won't have done my job very well.
And are you anticipating any issues with our 111 system?
No. The good news is I did check because there were a lot of concerns in Australia. Their system runs in quite a different technical way in the background to our 111 call. So in New Zealand, when you make a call to 111, it immediately comes out of the regular flow of traffic it is immediately sent to the call centre that runs the emergency calling directly. So there is no gap. In Australia, it goes through. There's an extra step in there, and that was the concern, was that this extra step would be a problem. I'm reliably told that won't be an issue here. So, however, we will test it, and we will run our own audits, and we will test it and make sure that everybody's going to be okay on the day.
You know, in the old, I don't really personally remember this, but grandparents have told me that when we went off dial-up internet.
Oh yes, I remember this.
Oh, I do remember this. And it suddenly became really fast and exciting.
Yeah.
Is this another step forward, or is it just a sort of change ahead?
No, it's absolutely an upgrade. So at the moment, we're 3G. The devices when 3G came out were the state of the art, and they were really exciting, but the videos were really low resolution. It was a very small video screen. You couldn't really see things terribly well on your phone. The speed and processing capability of your phone wasn't all that great. For people moving to 4G, the upgrade is faster speeds. It uses less of your battery life. You've got more ability to do more things on your phone. I'm afraid you'll have to download a few more apps. I'll show you some good ones. But it does give you a much better experience as a customer, because some of the frustrations with apps in particular is they're slow. I've got to put in all this information. It's a pain. That shouldn't be the case. And with 4G and also with 5G in the cities, in the urban areas, the speeds are outrageously fast, and you can do an awful lot more with the phone. It suddenly becomes quite useful instead of a drag. Yeah.
When's 6G coming in?
Well, it's a constant upgrade. So there is already talk of what's the next standard, how will we improve things from here. To be honest, we're reaching a bit of a plateau, I think, in terms of speeds and capabilities, where the next speed bump will almost be impossible for us humans to see. It'll be so fast we just won't.
You can't get faster
than faster. Yeah, exactly. So that will, I suspect, move a lot of the talk of 6G into, well, what else is it for? And it'll be that Internet of Things. It will be to make sure that your security cameras can send you very high resolution images very quickly. Remote management of vehicles is distinctly possible. All that kind of stuff that they're already practicing around the world and thinking about. The manufacturing space, but also agricultural. You know, we're starting to see self-drive tractors, GPS located, so you know exactly where in the field you're sowing the crops. Water monitors, all kinds of things are starting to come to market that would have been just science fiction only a few years ago. Australia has some fairly remote mining equipment in the middle of Australia that is run remotely from other locations using 5G. So that's the kind of work I think we'll see with 6G. But I don't know. They could surprise us yet.
That's all for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. This episode was engineered by Will Saunders and produced by Gwen McClure. Thanks to Paul Brislen and Patrick Moynihan, and to Amanda Gillies, who talked to Patrick. I'm Alexia Russell. Mā te wā.